Welcome to Forest County Outback. Now, you watched my first video on Kellettville, so now you think you know all about it. Well, you'd be wrong. This is Forest County Outback number 6, Kellettville, the return, and today we are going to walk out the Salmon Creek Road and we're going to check out the remains of the Kindling wood factory and the original Salmon Creek sawmill. So, let's go. Hey, before we get into today's video, I want to briefly address something that has recently come up, and that is disturbing and removing artifacts from historical sites. And in the distant past, I've been guilty of this myself, right? But I have come to realize that a historical site is just not a novelty or a relic. It's a view into the past, and it's a classroom. And by removing artifacts, by disturbing them, you are really you're disturbing a historical record, and it's disturbing and destroying it, really. And I view this as being selfish, unethical, unnecessary, and in most cases it's illegal. And I've recently had the opportunity to work with some professional archaeologists, and that has really driven the point home to me. Any excavation needs to be left to the professionals who can record it and interpret it and take lessons from it, and not just take something that, you know, somebody's just going to stick on their shelf as a novelty. Okay. And this is kind of a dilemma I've struggled with these videos, because I love history. I love going to these sites and, you know, looking around, trying to learn what I can from them. And a lot of people, apparently a lot of people feel that way, and I want to share that, and I want to educate people about the history of this area, but in a way that kind of brings it to real life, and not just, you know, sitting in a room lecturing people. But at the same, so while I want to make people aware of this, at the same time, I don't want to enable people who are going to destroy the site. So I've kind of come up with a compromise, which really, compromises satisfy no one, to be honest. But some of these sites they're very well known, they're easily accessible right along the road. People have been bottle hunting, been metal detecting there for years. They're pretty well picked over. The damage is done, and it can't be reversed. Most of the sites I'm going to are very isolated. It takes a real effort to get there. You need to be physically fit and willing to exert yourself to get there. What I'm going to do with those, I will just kind of give a general location, but I'm not going to get specific. I'm not going to give directions. I'm not going to give GPS coordinates. And, you know, hopefully that will be enough to dissuade the people who are just out there hunting relics. And as far as penalties, they can be substantial. Depending on where you do it, particularly on federal land, you may be running across the Antiquities Act and the Archaeological Resource Protection Act, the ARPA. ARPA first offense is up to $20,000 in a year imprisonment. Second offense, $100,000, 5 years imprisonment. Okay, you're probably not going to go to prison for picking up a bottle, you know, whatever, but you know, the potential is there. Antiquities Act is up to $500,000 and 5 years imprisonment. On Commonwealth, state forest, game lands, there are penalties for that, for removing artifacts there. I was trying to find the find what the penalties were, but I tried to do an internet search. It didn't work out that well. On private land, relic hunting requires written permission. If you do not have written permission, then you are subject to property damage claims and trespass violations. So, you know, if you're like me and you appreciate history, you want to get out there and look around, hey, great. Take your camera, take photos. Leave your metal detector at home, okay? Despite what you may have seen on TV, on YouTube videos, or heard from the salesperson where you bought this or the website you bought this off of, owning a metal detector does not give you license to go wherever you want and do whatever you want. So, you know, if you're interested in history, you want to look around, fine. But like I said, leave the metal detector at home. Anything you find, leave it there. Take photos. Okay, thanks. So this is the remains of the Kindling wood factory. And let me explain what a Kindling wood factory was. They made the original fire starters. You know, forget fat wood or whatever they're selling now. What they would do is take the slabs and edgings from the sawmill, and they would run them through a series of machines that would cut them down into 1-inch thick pieces of wood, about an inch and a half wide or so, and 2 to 3 inches long. Then they would run these through a special dry kiln, and then they would bundle them up in these small bundles that were wrapped with a twine that was impregnated with tar or something like that, and a paper label on them. And then they would be sold to apartment dwellers, mainly from here. Mainly they went to New York City, some went to Chicago, and they were used to start coal fires, or somebody just wanted to heat up a quick little pot of water for tea or coffee. That's what they would use. They would light the paper, and that would set the twine on fire, and that would ignite the wood. So that over there is the remains of the boiler house. And there was a large building on that flat there between the boiler house and those piers over there. On top of those piers was the dry kiln, and it was usually about 3 or 4 stories tall. You see in the photos. And they would be bundled up usually by school children working before or after work, or they would quit school and do this. Young, oftentimes girls, older girls, and that's something to supplement the family income. And they were paid $16 per 100 bundles. And a good bundler could do 1,000 bundles in an 11-hour shift. So think about that, for 11 hours you got $1.60. Yeah, people talk about, you know, pine for the good old days. I don't know, that sounds, sitting there for 16 hours wrapping little pieces of wood sounds pretty soul crushing to me, but whatever. So sometimes you think about it, the good old days weren't all that good. So let's take a closer look around here. And there are a few pits like this around here. Some of them I'm not sure what they're about, but so if you're in here when the vegetation's high or in the snow, you really have to be careful. And then that mound over there was a railroad siding came up there that was like a loading dock out there, and we'll take a closer look at that. There was also a siding that came up over in this area, and there was coal. Oh, there was a bunch of coal laying here somewhere. I don't exactly remember where. Can't see it for the leaves right now, but over in this area was like the coal dump. And then over here, see that archway, we'll take a closer look at. There's one over there. Those were the fire boxes. And this boiler provided steam not only for the dry kilns, but also to operate the machinery. So they had the fire boxes, and there would have been metal tube boilers on top of that. And over here is a pit, and if you look on the photos, there was a conveyor belt here that came out of this pit, and there's a iron pipe down in there that provided steam to run this thing, and that carried the wood up to the top of the tower where the kiln was, and they would just eventually drop through the kiln. So they came out into the room where they assembled the bundles. And we've got another pit over here. Now the new sawmill with the dry kilns was located across the creek, and there was a large elevated conveyor that brought the slabs over here. This building was well over 100 feet long, and like I said, you had the tower here with the dry kiln, and then between that and the boiler house there was a large building there that was probably where they ran the slabs and edgings through the saws to cut them down to size. Now this factory was operated by the Standard Wood Company, and they had several kindling wood factories across northern Pennsylvania. when I don't know of any sawmills that operated their own factory like this. It was always a separate company that came in and utilized the waste products. And this kiln factory was built in around 1908, 9, 10, around in there, and it operated up until the early 20s when the mill shut down. And also by that time gas was becoming more prevalent, and the market for kindling wood bundles had pretty much dried up. You might be able to see a shadow in the trees over there. If the leaves were down, you'd be able to see it. It's the walls of the regular dry kiln that we looked at in the first video. Okay, we're standing on that loading ramp, and that over there is the boiler house, and you have piers up that way and more piers down this way. And as I said, right in here, through here would have been the factory. Another group of piers, and you can see where the railroad the siding came up here, and it looks like it split off, and there was a siding that went up that way, and then that's the loading ramp over there. This is the end of the piers here, and then back here is another pit, and then there was a siding that came up here. And another one that went up over that way, which goes right to the boiler house. And then Salmon Creek is down that way. Another interesting thing about this particular factory, these had a habit of burning down. Pretty much they all did at one time or another, sometimes repeatedly. And this is one of the few, in fact maybe the only one, that never did burn down. Okay, on to the sawmill. The beautiful fall day here. I probably should have waited about a week or so to start filming before more leaves would come down, but I was getting anxious. So anyhow, the Salmon Creek, the original Salmon Creek mill, is down at the bottom of this hill. Now, this field out here, there were houses in here, and there's several cellar holes through here, and you look on a photograph, you'll be able to see some houses up on the hill above the mill. And of course you got apple trees. That's always a sign of previous habitation. And that up there is Stony Point. the highest point in Forest County. Yeah, beautiful day. So we're on an old railroad grade that came up past the mill. The mill's over that way, and there's some rubble down there, some pieces of metal. There was some kind of a building here. This site's pretty overgrown, and it's hard to tell where some of the stuff was, if it was where it fit in with the mill. There's some kind of structure here. This may have been the boiler house. Like I said, it's so overgrown, it's hard to figure out locations of different things. But with this amount of brick, that's a pretty good possibility. So we're going to look around here through the underbrush some more. There are some foundations and that in here where machinery was mounted. So here are two concrete foundations. There's a stone one in here somewhere, but it's gotten so overgrown in here. It's just, so there's a bolt in that one. So from the photos I have, if this is the mill, the dam should be up that way a little bit. So we're going to head over to the creek. Salmon Creek is right over there, and see if we can go up a little bit and find the dam. It used to be pretty visible because 30 years ago there was hardly any brush in here, but not now. Things are hard to see. Okay, here's that stone foundation. The concrete ones are right over there. Here's the stone one. So the dam should be right up here. Okay, it's hard to see, but there's the dam here. And there were some, if you look on the photos, there were also some, I don't know what you call them, concrete, or not concrete, but stone crib work. Because the dam extended all the way across the creek here. And I think this is probably one. Okay, here's one of them here. Okay, this was, okay, there was stone crib work here to help support the dam. Okay. We had a lot of rain last night. We brought the creek up. They were almost dry. Okay, now there was the dam, the mill over that way, and then down below it there was several sightings, rail sightings that came up Salmon Creek. The history of this mill goes back to 1878, and was built by a guy named Adamson, and he bought quite a bit of timber up here. And he tried to run the mill for 15 years, and it was never profitable because they were bringing the timber in by team, or trying to float it down Salmon Creek, which was problematic. And they had no rail connection. They would have to haul the lumber from here on a wagon down to Tynester Creek and make rafts out of it. And of course, floating lumber on Tynester Creek was a seasonal thing. So he was always struggling. In 1893, Teddy Collins bought the operation, and he had the money to put it on a sound financial footing. He built the first section of the Sheffield and Tynester Railroad from Kellettville down to Ross Run, and they hauled their lumber down there and out over Wheeler and Dusensbury, Hickory Creek Railroad down to the Allegheny. And of course, later on, he would extend the S&T all the way to Sheffield, and eventually all the way to Tynester. And this mill ran until the early 1920s, when they had cut all the virgin timber and shut down. Okay, so now you think you know all about Kellettville. Well, you're still wrong. There will be a part 3, maybe 4, depends how it goes. And I would kind of like to get back to that mill out there in the spring when the vegetation is really down, and see if I can make more sense of it. So if you like it, hit the like button. It's pretty simple. That helps me out. Subscribe. That also helps me out. Comments, although I'm not sure how comments on YouTube work. Somebody told me that you can't make a comment on YouTube unless you have a channel. I am not sure how that works. I got to figure that one out. But I do intend to set up a email account just for the channel, and when I get that done, I will put a link in the description. So anyhow, next week, I think next week is the Indian doctor. Interesting fella he was. So we'll catch you then, and thanks for watching, and see you later.